for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumined, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome again to a video about love with me here today. And once again, the focus will be about divine, sacred, Illumined Union. This is my life now. It actually never has not been my life, but as you know, life has different chapters. So here we are, a brand new chapter, and I'm going to continue in this direction for as long as I'm here, because this is something that the Mother really wants from me. It's just a very strong, intense pull. And I've been talking about this Illumined Union as this light and dark integration. And for the last few years for me, this was experienced more in a sense of happening in spirit. There was a strong, almost like esoteric nature to it. And I've talked about it for the past 2 years on my Patreon page as these Luciferian waves and interjections into the human experience of the breakthroughs of Illumined Union. And I was actually contemplating on this today. You know, how many of these breakthroughs as humans we actually need to have? Why is it so intense? And why sometimes we just want to quit and leave it all to chance, you know, because it feels that intense. And sometimes it feels that no matter how many breakthroughs we actually perform, that is how it's been for me, it still feels like in the physical, not much is happening, not much is going on. So I've been in quiet, contemplative space. And as you know, my trend continues of this insomnia and waking up around 4 to 5 a.m. And around 6 o'clock in the morning, I get to experience a beautiful sunrise, and it's just amazing. I haven't been witnessing that, as you know, in the Alps, because there's a closed off terrain there, but here is just wide open space, and it's just amazing. And I'm loving these sunrises. And when the sun comes up, I'm having my contemplations and meditations and prayers to Source. And I'm also seeing each day how the energy is changing. So we're going to talk about the other polarity of these unions, of these tantric unions, from a perspective of how these cycles of dark and light are basically being integrated. We've talked about this for the past 2 years, like I said, on Patreon, my page, and people who've been with me during that time have been probably realizing that within themselves, and each one having their different experience with it. My experience, because I'm a creation angel in a way, has been really wide. And I've been picking up on everything from the creation angel perspective, which is the essence perspective, you know, and even though I exist most of the time in this essence perspective, I'm still as a human having my own experience as a human with it just as well. So today we're going to talk about these things a little more. We're also going to do a mini reading, and we're going to wrap it up with a prayer. It's going to be an intense prayer, and I'll ask you how to pray with your full heart, because there's still so much investment of the dark in this not happening and this not being fully anchored into the earth experience. As I've told you, the seed of Illumined Union was planted. That was around 2019. That was when for me this was experienced, and after that, you know, I had this cutting off, and I won't go into that again because I don't want to repeat myself, and I often do, and right, no one wants to repeat themselves, especially not me. I want to start today by saying that, you know, when I wake up these days and these mornings, sometimes I'll wake up with a strong feeling of love, and sometimes there's a feeling of stagnancy, and sometimes there's a feeling of intense darkness. Like just for the past few days, I was releasing these remnants of transgression energy, and these fears that are very much, or have been, you know, put through these inception layers, overlays into my body that are slowly then gradually leaving the body, and they feel like these very deep primordial fear contractions within the belly region in the plexus area, and you're not doing anything. You're just feeling those rushes. They're like rushes of fear moving through your body, and you're just lying there and focusing on love, and that's a very intense experience to have. So today there was this weird, almost like an emptying out feeling, and I'm going to talk about that as well in the completion of these cycles. But I want to give you good news first, because when I went outside and I had this feeling that when these energies are very intense, it's very good to focus on that which we call the fairy magic, which is the elemental realm, the nature world, enticing it with this presence, telling us it's all okay. We get to be playful too. We don't always have to take this path so seriously. So I had my first beautiful message today when I was sitting outside on my balcony and sunbathing a bit. A bee sat on me, and that happens a lot, for me. Bees like to sit on me for some reason. I'm a queen. And yeah, queen bee. But today it was different. The bee sat on my left leg, and she left an imprint. She left me a little bit of that pollen that she's gathering, was honey essence. So I felt that message almost like a gift, because it was on the left side of my body and was like the receptive side. And I felt that as some sort of gift, because the bee also represents, for me, it's also a symbol of the feminine, right? It's like the gatherer. Oftentimes I was receiving these messages how, as you know, Lucifera, she's considering herself to be the queen of this universe, and she's not. So when I took that tile, when Aurea came through my being, and she was, I shared all about that on my Patreon page years ago. And I was having that self-awakening into my true power. She was getting very upset, and she was punishing me with these very different things in nature, and taking away my sacred spots. And I'm not going to go into that now, but it was really literally for me a war. I was living in a war zone. It's settled now. It's much more peaceful. After moving to this place, this is finally the first place, even though it's still temporary. It's like a tent. It's not a house yet. A tent is a temporary house you put on hold until you, go to your next station. It feels very peaceful here. This is my first month that I've actually felt peaceful, and I've accepted this environment, and I allow myself to enter into this healing, nourishing stage of the journey, and still having that last remnants of the transgression healing and experiencing that. And as I'm going about this, there's levels of this union polarities playing out and what I need to share with all of you. So it's been intense. The next message I've gotten today is I went outside, and although we already had our first butterflies a while ago, the yellow ones, these are usually the starter ups, today I saw my first white one, and the white butterfly is my ultimate favorite, because as you know, I talk about this a lot. A white butterfly was presented to me years ago as the symbol of Holy Spirit. And when I see white butterflies, especially if they're flying before me and they're kind of indicative of the path, they're always telling me that life force is creating a new opening. And I was very happy to receive that message. So there are things happening, and the fairy magic is the subtle nature of getting into these messages synchronously and feeling into the force of light rather than being into the mind, right? Because being very mentally perplexed and living throughout these cycles of mental expression, and often this leads to depression as well, because when you're so much in the mind, the tantric part of you is not active. It remains dormant and inactive. So it causes a lot of sexual frustration as well, and that feeling of being entrapped, because we're actually not flowing our life force, we're not cycling it throughout the whole body, right? So these things were leading me on to feeling that there is a new resurgence, and we did just have our beautiful spring equinox here in the northern hemisphere at least. So I want to talk about the first message that I received today, which is kind of in alignment with this synchronization of the polarities as they're playing out, right? The masculine and feminine. So today I received this message how, when we're in a very particular cycle and we're feeding off almost like a hummingbird or a butterfly that's feeding off of that nectar that we're using to later on in our solace space use for our own integration and absorb more of the self, which eventually leads into total self-embodiment. Embodiment is always the last stage of the journey, and it's a gradual process. You don't digest yourself and then embody yourself immediately. It's like a gradual step-by-step journey, and we've talked about it, how this happens through the reflection of the mirror, the triggering, the integration, the absorption, the digestion of the self, and then lastly, there is this what we call embodiment stage. And the embodiment, when it's that fullness of what you've expanded into as the next concentric cycle of the ring or ring of the cycle, then you take it back in. This is how a true sacred union journey looks like. It's not about person to person or an attachment. It's literally the journey of spirit moving into form through the mirroring of these reflective divine partnerships that are soul to soul based, when we talked about that in the previous video, right? So moving on today, when we are in this external cycle, where most beings still have issues is that they get looped, right? We're getting into the looping, and we've talked about looping for the past few months, I believe, and it's a really intense thing actually to experience, because you can't break through, because you have, like, we pile up so much of that rubbish that eventually the more that it culminates, the more difficult it becomes for us to actually break through. So it's very difficult for us to let something go, whether it's a way we connect to someone or just that someone. But it's not usually that we get to release someone. We just release the way we connect to them, because that needs to grow in the next level of its transformational development, into this next octave of growth. This is normal soul growth that is a part of this, what we call the tantric beloved union, and merging within the inner sacred polarities of the hero's gamos, or the sacred marriage. And the problem is that we still tend to cycle ourselves, and we don't want to let something go. And it's an idea we have about the person or the idea about the relationship. But in truth, if the love is real, remember, we've talked about it in the first video, the love comes back. And when you're back in the circle, when you're really in the ring of fire, you're going to feel it again. And it's going to be a renewed kind of love. It's going to be deepened. So the message was coming really strongly that for us to have closure or complete something, we really have to let something go, the entire cycle, everything that played out. And sometimes, we need to have that retrospective, like all the mirrors within the one mirror, we need to see all of its fragments to finally get the full picture. And sometimes we won't get that closure from the outside. Like, if you're in a relationship, you might not always get closure from the other person, but that closure is an internal doing. It's an inside job, which means that there are these reflective qualities that need to be awakened within us, and we need to see where the inner darkness is still keeping us captive somehow, and how to basically break through it. And I know it's difficult because I've been through so many breakthroughs, and still the journey continues. And sometimes I get like hammered and I can't go on. And it's okay to take a break from time to time and pause, because this sacred illumination journey and Illumined Union path, it's really intense. And you see, I've been on this path sharing these videos for 10 years and I'm still here. And sometimes literally you have to see me. I say to Spirit, what do you expect me to do? Have these video recordings for 10 years and over? That's not something I can do my entire life. That's not all I'm going to do in this life. Come on. I get like this as well. I get frustrated because I don't picture my life as like this constant. This earth is often perceived as this constant day just being replayed until, the final character gets the lesson. And because the lesson is so huge, because it's not just a lesson, it's a perpetual journey of this union that the mother has designed, and we're all just players in it. We're her hearts of the one heart, and she has envisioned something really deep for each and every one of us. And through this journey, we're slowly unraveling the gift, but our higher counterparts know this. It's like our earthly counterparts don't always get what this is about, and they're stubborn. They're needing to know, what is this for? If it's even worth the investment? Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why am I having this relationship, for example? And the reason why we don't get answers to that, and the mind tries to compensate for us not getting the divine answers, is because we're not meant to. We're the journeying aspect of the union. We're the players. We're the children. We're the human counterparts that need to experience that. Imagine the higher counterparts telling us, this is because this and that. And then you already know. And when you're in the knowing, you already try to bypass the experience. It's almost like, someone comes into your life. And if you knew all the facts and you've seen the movie, what you want to play out, or what wants to play itself out through your connection, and you wouldn't like, the final result, you go like, no, just put it on hold. I'm not going to go through this. You try to bypass the experience, which is what we often do the same with our minds. We're trying to logically reason ourselves out of our experience, but until there's longing in our soul, this fuel of the fire that keeps rushing for us to have that experience, it's going to continuously come back to us. And this is why today Spirit wants me to talk about these cycles, because when something is not complete, your thoughts will keep returning that to you, and it's going to keep forcing you to embrace a new aspect of the feeling, something you haven't embraced yet, a truth, a clarity, a vision you haven't yet received in totality, a truth you haven't yet shared with someone, a truth you haven't basically shared within yourself. There's people who are living on a very false, superficial level, and they're lying to themselves about their life choices and thinking, well, that's the best they can do. And it's basically a lie. And there's a lot of lies we tell ourselves when we're not being honest through that reflective integration. That's basically how we are supposed to live when we're in this path. Like, no one is forcing us how fast, how slow, but the acceleration has to match the desire of our soul. And in most cases, as we know, it's kind of oblique. It doesn't happen this way all the time. So it's very important for us to know that we really need to let go of something, like fully surrender it. When we've gotten all the mirrors, like we've exhausted all the resources, we've given and planted all the seeds, and we feel like there's nothing left, that's the tipping point. That is when we have to let it go and release, even at the energetic level, not just physically. And then this is the aspect when spirit comes in, because the human opens up and plants the seed, and then the spirit comes in. And I've talked about this integration, I think on Patreon before, how spirit and the human are working together. I think I've also talked about this on YouTube too, because it is the ultimate truth. You know, it's like we live that aspect of the outside immersion when we're like a hummingbird and we're like exchanging, and there's eventually a wall we hit, and we can't have that exchange anymore because there's a new level of separation there. So then we turn the energy back in, we do the integration work, we stay in the core, we invite in more of that Christ light, and it's not a vertical experience, because to be in the Christ is not that, oh, worshiping of that divine light, come through my column, come through my pillar, and that's it, you know. Woe is, you know, hey, Hail Mary. It's nothing like that. It's very organic. It is the human having a total experience, totality of the humanness in learning and accepting all that was still in separation, and through that, cracking through the separation, embracing the divinity of soul and our spirit in union. So what's happening here is that each level of that separation will take us closer within, and for us to complete that chapter, we're going to have to find that resolution within and let everything go. And this is when spirit will create a synchronistic opportunity or something when we have that click. Let's say if we can make a choice whether to communicate with someone or not, or we move on with something or not, we have this choice to make or not, and we can't seem to make it from this perspective. And when you fully release it and you say, just, I've done everything, I've researched all my venues, I put the energy everywhere, but it doesn't come back to me, then at that point, that's your cue. Let it go. Fully release it, because that cycle has to end. And sometimes we also need to, what Spirit calls, experience that withdrawal. You know, it's like in the absence of something or someone, you actually get to see the clarity of what this or they are to you, or what they brought to you. Because we're not always exposed to that light, right? Like it's in front of you all the time. It's like you're being hand-fed. You're not seeing the answers yourself. You're not getting the clarity. So in the absence of that, you're also seeing, wow, you know, in that void, you're getting the clarity for yourself. This is how spirit operates through us. And then we bring that back to the inward journey, which is what we call the womb. This is when the feminine kicks in. And so the feminine aspect then, when she comes back to the fullness of the inner circle, she needs to come and enter into the silence, which is the giving up, the total surrender. This is not giving up as in not caring and thinking there is no more chance. No, you hold the vision for union. But at that point, you just surrender it to the divine. And at this point, you only have to cultivate the inner life force for the next cycle. This is how everything works, right? And that's when the gift comes. That's when the bee comes and drops a little pollen gift to you, and you see a white butterfly, and fairy magic seems to be working again, because you've just released and you're not trying to find answers anymore. You go into the core of what you feel. So these are the basic integration waves that we're feeling, and I've talked about this before, but each time, you know, as I'm growing into it, there's a depth to it that's new, that's unveiled and uncovered, and the way I can speak about it as well. So this surrender to love we've talked about. I actually recently came across this beautiful song, and I think I've shared it with you, right? It's from Martika, and it's called Love Thy Will Be Done. I don't know whether I shared it in the previous video or not, because I tend to speak a lot, so if I haven't, or if I have, it doesn't matter. It's a beautiful song of literally that total surrender to the beauty of love. And when I listen to that song, oh goodness, I'm so softened. This song to me represents this state that I'm currently in perfectly, but it doesn't mean like I'm always in it. In every wave, I will feel the suppression of the oppression as well. So I want to share these cards with you today. You know how I always say, this is my favorite deck, this is my favorite oracle. Well, this one I get to show you today is truly my absolute favorite. So no lying to you about it. This is called the Journey of Love. And it is my absolute favorite. And I don't use it every day to make it even more special because it's been with me for years. So I try to keep it. And I'll read you one card from the deck because it really describes what we're feeling. So I was communing with the mother today with all these questions and burning questions I still had in me. And she was actually replying to me through the cards. So the cards we got, I'll just show you the cards first, are the communal dance, which talks about togetherness and that we don't have to do this alone, that it's time for us to join with like beings and like minds and like hearts, that we're entering into the next chapter, that a lot of us are going to enter the next chapter of our earthly life experience, not as separate beings or alone, or an identity of the entity, that we're going to do this together, whether physically or not. But it's like the mission is broadening because we've opened up to love. We have Angel of Jupiter Awaken, which is very much similar message. As you know, Jupiter is about expansion. It's about abundance, also monetary form of abundance. It's growth. It's soul cultivation. Jupiter also links with higher angelic presence. So definitely, you know, when you look at Jupiter, it has these stripes, gold and white, which to me, they represent the golden white ray. And it's a higher celestial essence brought through our planetary deity, which also, you know, it's almost like a sun. It's just too small to be a sun, but it has the quality of the star within it. So there's a huge expansion when we join this communal dance. And the mother speaks also about the sacred convergence. And that sacred convergence is a coming of togetherness first within ourselves, the many parts of us that have been sort of scattered along. And, you know, maybe you meet a person who brings life to you again, someone who makes you feel alive. And you go like, what the heck? I was living like this, almost like in a jail ward. You know, I didn't even know I'm behind closed bars because I stopped growing. And this person, the soul comes along, I have a connection when they show me life can be so much more. And this is the sacred convergence, coming together, but also coming together within the parts of ourselves. Because, you know, I see people still in this planet, they're always choosing between this and that. And they think this is the basics of choice, being forced to make a choice between one thing and the other. No, remember the mastery of Saint Germain, who says it's about this or that, not this, you know, not this or that, but this and that. You have to find a unity aspect to it, because until you can unify that which you're kind of choosing between, it's still duality. You need to unify that, so it becomes a trinity. In that trinity, you always know what to do. So this sacred convergence is also, you know, as you can see, sorry for the noise, they're making something, building or something. You have the Lover's card next. I love how it's presented here. It's like all white and it's just like a cartoon drawing. It's just black stripes, but it's basically all white. It's the simple nature of what it means to be in this beloved lover presence. It's just like all the problems, all the mental chatter, all the ideologies. When you're in that presence with someone, let's say your body's fully entwined, and I don't mean just sexually, but energetically, when you can come into that state of intimacy, that you interlock, it's like life becomes this blank piece of paper, and you're just like a silhouette of beings, like an ethereal fine print of what spirit intended for you, for both. And they're like looking up, right? In this image, they're looking up to that which created them, which is bigger than them, which is that sacred convergence, right? And the next one is Yin and Yang Lover. This card actually in this deck talks about what you're seeking is also seeking you. It's that communion that eventually the desire and that one that is the one who desires are coming together. That's also that sacred cosmic or harmonic convergence. Then we have the Mother Prays, which is interesting because we're also going to do the prayer towards or to the Mother today, but it's also her praying through us when we pray to the Mother. So basically learning that we're not separate from her. It's like all the universal wisdom and all the realms are entwined through her love. She is basically us. This is the gifts received. Well, I received mine today through the bee. It's like very golden. Left a little golden imprint. I think it's still in my pants. She made a stain. I'm going to remember that stain forever. I'm not going to even wash these pants like ever. So cool. And the last one was the pearl threaded. You know, this is kind of like that which connects is naturally meant to connect. It's not something you can force. It's something that's willed into life by forces greater than our own will. So we're still working on surrendering the human will, because sometimes our human will cannot visualize something coming together because it doesn't make sense physically. But for the mother, through her eyes, her conception, because she, you know, it's like all of us are a part of her conception, is that immaculate, you know, conception. We're all threaded together. That's like pearls threaded together in the seamless kind of sense, this unseen realm that, you know, even though we're human and we're not seeing all the aspects of the bigger picture, we're feeling them. And she wants to emphasize how moving into her heart is getting us closer to the feeling. I'll share my own experience. Most of the time I'm in this heart presence, and when I'm in it, I'm in this magical child experience, and I see the world with wonder and awe, and everything is possible and nothing is impossible. And in those moments we're seeding this earth with the nectar of life. And this is what the bee says, right? But eventually we're also here to reap those seeds, right? We're reaping something. And in this case, you know, that's something golden, because it was this golden nectar imprint, which means things, when they cultivate to a certain extent, they will come back to us. But right now, I also want to show you, I don't know if I've worked with this deck. I actually created tons of these mini videos that were on Patreon. I work with this tarot of spirit. We work with these cards, and I actually explain higher aspects of what we call tarot, because this is the only deck. This deck, the tarot of spirit, full tarot. Who's the author? Does it say? Pamela Eakins and Joyce Eakins, the scribe and the painter. This deck for me is my ultimate deck to go to when I'm seeking answers as to what's happening in the spirit realm. Because there's different energies, right? We would read with different aspects or different cards. This deck is really the ultimate, and I've recommended it to all people on my Patreon page, and we work with it. I created tons of these videos, like almost every day I used to record them. That was back in the fall, October, November. And it was 2 months of constant. So these videos are still there. If you join my Patreon page, already the first tier level, there's 3 levels, but the first level already covers these mini videos. Although in the beginning, butterfly, a orange one. Oh, you can't see it. It's such a waste. I hope it's, come. Sit on Miss Aurea Dawn. No, he's going the other way. Anyway, but it was a nice message, right? That a confirmation that if you want to, this first level did not cover videos before, but then I started this mini video readings, and there was so much coming through, and we were working a lot on this integration of light and dark and embracing the Christ from what it truly is within the inner Christ self, not as an ideology or principle, but like the inner principle of life. And there was so many videos, and they're still there. They're infinitely there. So I want to show you these cards that came out here today, because I've taken this deck after quite a long time. No, I'm actually lying, because not lying, but I forgot. Last week I used these cards and I got the same message, Sacred Convergence and the Two of Cups. And there was a strong sense of union, and I've been getting these union messages for probably the past month, really intensely. But as we know, I hope you've seen it this time, because you just bypassed me. These waves of union have been really intense in terms of, if you're not living in your head space, if you're living in your heart and you feel pulses of spirit, you will feel how these waves and contractions are coming really strongly now. And I've been talking about this as the expression through the weather as well. So these cards actually today, they were telling the same story, because what happened was, I have this card in this deck that I call my mother, which is Aurea, and she comes as the mother of fire, and she's like this. So she came, and whenever she comes in the reading, I'm like, oh, Aurea has a message for me, and I'm just listening and paying attention. So the next one was the Sister of Wind, which was this working with life force to almost like overcome something, because this is here, oh, we see butterflies as well, but this here, as you can see in this deck, and like I said, I've excessively worked with it on Patreon. This woman is almost like becoming this force, like her body eventually becomes this starfire, and she's needing to use a lot of force to create the spiral that moves through something. And this is what I call creating these gateways for these breakthroughs. And this is not when we're being passive, because there's a time to be passive and surrender for the spirit to enter, and there's a time in which we're really proactive. And I feel that when Aurea comes into me, and when there's a sense of total stagnation and I know nothing what else is left to do, she comes and she will enter through me, and she's gonna cut the cord, she's gonna deal with the dark, she's gonna tell it off like it is. She comes and she creates this divine intervention, but it's not from the outside, it's through me. So for me, I'm experiencing union this way. And here I feel that this is a message that sometimes we do need to work with the force. It's not always all just about surrendering. There's surrendering, and there's an active manifestation, this alchemical presence that we're weaving up, or we're conjuring up this life force. And for me, when I'm in this space, I'm like, I'm not even as myself. You know, it was a few days ago, I have this music I listen to, and it's perfectly cosmic for when I'm more in a pulsar state. And the music is from someone called Aurea. I think it's French, but I'm not sure. This being must surely be Arcturian, because this music has such light codes. And this is the only music actually that gets me into the pulsar state. I don't know what, for some reason it does. And I was walking around, and because I created that space, that opening, Aurea came through. And when I'm in her presence, I'm just walking, and like my eyes change, the way I see reality around me changes. And she was giving me this sentence, and she was saying through me something like, to this world of human souls, I don't belong, I know. I'm not a human that I know. To the world of souls, I don't belong. And yet here I am, taking some of them back home, like with me back home. This is something she was saying. Like, she just comes and she's fighting for these beings, and she's trying to pull these beings up. And I'm not saying this is the same as rescuing, but this is how this illumination also works, not just as a self journey, a partnership-oriented tantric beloved journey, but also a collective journey, which is the aspect we're talking about here today. Is that each time when a new level of that conjuring is created, like there's a stirring, more life force is brought, there's more soul, that which was before pulled downwards through that debris is being lifted up. And that's what Aurea is channeling through me right now. It's the human and spirit cooperating. It's the mother coming through the human. And she, for me, she feels like the wind. And here also is described as the sister of wind. And when she comes, I feel her as this powerful wind force. And I'll talk about Aurea and her ascension in the next video that I already recorded, but I'm not yet called to share it yet. And she told me I need to start talking about ascension, actually, because it's time we stop just talking about it. But those of you in this path, you're going to have to start facing the reality that this is actually where we're going. This is not just in our minds now, or in an archetype or an ideal, and it's something we've read about. It's something we've been preparing for, and now here it is. This is the moving into it stage. So she told me to start talking about it, and I will. And I already am, like giving you little nudges, pieces here and there. So what this does, right, when we're bringing through this very intense current of life force again, this is what came next. The 8 of water, called the still waters, and the 3 of water, the stream of love. So when this mental space, this debris space, this devil-like space, this hijacked space is present, the only thing that truly can penetrate through it is the spirit operating through the human. It's not like spirit's going to rescue us through this. Divine intervention cannot be an external thing. It is an internal thing. When your prayer space and your clearing creates a divine opening for the spirit to enter you, and then you get to have that power. Let me give you an example. If you are praying to make a choice, and it's always just a prayer, and it ends up being a constant battle, clashing of your own internal wills that change from day to day, one day when you have enough clearing created and enough of that illusory debris comes off and the veils and thickness are removed, you're aligned again, and that's when the spirit can enter and the soul is set free, and all of a sudden you just know what you need to do, and it's so simple. That's the work towards something, and then the work in actuality that is the work. See the difference? So again, this brings in the stream of flow. When that flow is created before, where there was stagnancy, and this is what was represented with the next card that followed it, was the Father of Wind. And I saw this is so much darkness within the masculine. This is the a father of air, which is the king of air, which here is represented almost like a man battling the devil. The inner, it's like a bull. It's represented as bull with horns, like the devil is the bull with horns in a way. And it's almost like that creates an ovoid around him, almost like this cave kind of sensation. And you can't stay in that cave, so you gotta eventually start weaving that battle. But that battle remains a stagnant one. You see, we have the two of wind, the crossing. It's like neither one of these players wins. The light within you, the dark within you does not win. There's no win-win scenario until there's this battle. Because what's lacking is what I've shown you, this conjuring up life force and allowing spirit. And if you think you can't do that, just ask spirit to do that on your behalf and say, Spirit, I don't know how to do this. Finally in my life, I'm going to try to stop figuring this out. I'm going to let you to do it through me and for me, because I'm not separate from you. Who you are is the spirit of the mother. And eventually things will have to come to this crossing. And this is the stalemate. I know the stalemate is a difficult, challenging energy because it feels like no one is winning. There's like this. And a lot of people have been in the stalemate frequency. I think we've talked about it in the previous video for a long time. Maybe it's just changing and turning things around a bit, but it never ends. So that's probably why I was guided to talk about these ending of cycles in the first part. And it might be difficult, but sometimes we need to have an idea that something really dies, that we can actually grieve that, and it does die, so it can be reborn within a new form. Because until it's like this, you're battling duality, and it's either you choosing this or that, and this is constant stream of separation. But the point of Illumined Union is not just indefinitely living through union stages and separation stages, but eventually coming into union that's permanent and lasting. And some of us are living in that state already, holding space for others, and most people are still coming into that state, which is what I explained. Like each time there's a stirring of the pot of life force, there's like an upliftment of more souls from the debris-like state. This is happening at the spirit level. So we also have this one, which for me is the most difficult energy in tarot to experience, is the 9 of wind or the 9 of air. It's that mental fatigue and drainage and sleepless nights and insomnia. I have that too, but in most cases I get to feel it from the outside because I'm so sensitive. Here it's called the screen. The screen is almost like ghostly memories and visions that keep on being replayed, and you can't go through them. It's like you can't bypass them. No matter how hard you try, they keep coming, and you think you do one layer of wiping the shield, comes back, and you're like, oh, there it goes again. A 9 of wind. It's like ghosts of, they're not ghosts of the past. They're ghosts of that world, which is not the world of light. It's the shadow world. It's the shadowy realm. And it keeps on being replayed until we get, right, that there is no other solution but to return to this inner resolved state of the flow of the infinite mother's presence, which here in the last card represented is the mother of water. She, for me, here is the tantrika. Like the ultimate tantrika is the life giver. You know, when people use the term tantrika lightly in the new age, I once had someone express this towards me, and I'm like, that's not what a tantric is, I'm sorry. They express it like it's a woman having tantric sex. No, that's not what a tantrika is, by the way. This, for me, is the ultimate expression of what the tantrika is a being, is a deity in a way. Even when, you have a human form, it's still a deity. And it's the kind of expression of life that's always like still waters. But in that stillness, there is also a stirring up. And she, through that powerful presence, that piercing motherly presence, can conjure up whatever is needed or necessary for the next, upheaval. Sometimes it's needed. Tower moments, shattering of illusions, thickening of veils, dissolving of veils, moving into life, more life, more life. And she's simply that holding of that presence, like the infinite white Tara, mother, Ma, just holds that space. And when we ourselves can come into that space, this is the ultimate space when there's no more this, and there's a constant battle with the devil, with that which is ego inside us. That's how we connect to the devil principle. And it's a constant clashing. One day you have one desire, the next day, oh, it's not like that. And it's constant doubt and awakening and doubt and epiphany and doubt. And this is always playing out like this, right? Playing a checkboard, white and black, positive, negative. I know, I don't know. I'm for sure, oh, I doubt. This is the ultimate. This is that beyond the screen, beyond the polarities, this is that stillness of the waters, of the tantrika, the giver of life. And when you're in that headspace, mental space, whether it's your own or whether you feel it from the collective or you're a very sensitive being and you don't know what to do next, sometimes in that state, I'm just going to ask the spirit and say, I've come to a null point, or what, I don't know, people call the mute point. I don't know what else to do. And then I just drop it off, and I'm always invited to enter my power, which is simple as that. It's my powerful spirit name presence, and it is, I am Aurea. And I remember, and I'm sitting with her as her in her space, and conjuring up the will to be of service. So through that will of service, we're going to do the prayer now until the video is too long again, and I'm all entangled here in my microphone. And the prayer is going to be very simple. The prayer will be oriented towards the fulfillment of the union's plan of the mother for the highest outcome for all these vows that many of soul beings have made within themselves and with each other. I have to, get these back in the box just in case the wind comes and blows them away, because these are my favorite tarot and my favorite deck. Kind of go together. And so, anyway, we're going to do that prayer. And the only thing I ask you is, imagine that there's still hardship on this planet. We're still not feeling that on this planet you get to fully experience this. I just recently had this walk, and I had this moment when I was totally off, and I was venting out into the great cosmos, and I was going this world sucks. Everything about it sucks. I was in this mode saying no one is with the person they want to be with. Everyone's living a different lifestyle that they actually want to. You don't live where you want to live. You want to be somewhere else, but you're walking in this shit, because there was all these piles of manure where I was walking. I was so upset. It's that's all I get to watch in this realm, on this earth. Nothing beautiful anymore. And I was so pissed. And we all have those human moments where we just need to crack and vent it out. And that's normal, because this is not always a pleasant world to live in. Because here in this world, we get to do work. We come here to work, and it doesn't feel like there was a lot about enjoyment in this life. And it is the cycle where synthesis is happening, and that's why it's not so pleasant. And a lot of us are just wishing and dreaming and being whisked away, but that's imagination. Real work will actually get us to have not just the work done, but having the fruits of our labors being fulfilled and lived and experienced. And perhaps maybe not in this world exactly, but the next one, which is maybe just a tiny veil away. And that's the reason why I'm going to start talking about ascension more. And what it is, I'm going to let spirit speak through me. But before that, I just wish to present this prayer as an easing of our hearts, the softening of our hearts, and praying with all your heart that this divine union plan is fulfilled through you, through the community of those people who are in this path, those souls who are meant to come into this union, whether alone or with the other, but also us doing it together as one group of illuminating beings and eventually ascending through that Illumined Union. So here we go. I need to just shift my microphone so I don't squeeze it. So, beloved Mother of Life, we here as your beautiful divine children and also your humble servants ask you, pray to you with all of our hearts that we have the strength of will to persevere no matter how conditions or circumstances look like on this plane of existence, because it feels so hard at times. Our desires, our longings, our wishes, feeling torn between that which is real and that which is our ideal. There's a constant feeling of longing and unfulfillment that kind of sometimes just feels like a major heartbreak for us. So we ask you to move through us, and especially at those times, to make us not just believe, but to have full faith in this plan of yours, of Illumined Union and the coming together, and that the right souls come together, that there is true magnetic connection between those who are meant to be threaded together and bonded for life, not lived through bondage and attachment. And let there be security of our self-assurance instead of insecurity of ego and doubt and illusion incepted into us through fears of the dark and control and oppression that belongs to that world of darkness. Let there instead be this world of light that we know every day we're here to cultivate. And even though we might not perceive ourselves to be the most active agent, maybe we just have a simple life and don't seem to do much of what many people call light work. But still, just our inner transformation is so powerful to that which the whole collective will experience because of our inner shifts, because of our inner choices. So help us to remember that the choices we're making are not just our own. The choices we're making are for the greater collective, are for the greater good, and they are selflessly made as offerings to serve your greater plan of Illumined Union. And we fully know and trust that many of the previous masters and sages in the previous ages that preceded our human experience perhaps did not talk about these things so openly because it wasn't yet time. But now it is. And so many of us are feeling to come into this union, to feel a greater pull towards life, to be more embodied, to be more unified and joined with others, because we have still this desire. This desire, this longing is still in our human expression, and our body feels like it needs to experience that before it ascends to the next level. This is our desire. And in that desire, we ask you to act with your full power of spirit presence every time and any time there is darkness at bay and there is darkness at hand. And at first, our response to that darkness might be fear. And we want to remain in that clashing of wills. And this is how the darkness keeps on rowing and going and growing within. But the moment we choose to withdraw and pull away from it and not feed it any energy, raising up our loyalties and placing them where true loyalty is supposed to be, which is the loyalty to your truth, beloved mother. And by honoring you, I'm honoring my own sacred divine human child, the heart of all hearts, the heart that is the sacred beloved, the heart that is becoming the illumined beloved through every choice that I'm making, choosing myself instead of the status quo, choosing myself and the utter fulfillment of life flowing through me. And every time I feel more alive, I know I'm in the presence of you and the bounty and grace of your limitless nature of life force that guides me forward like a beautiful white butterfly. And every time there's restriction, like for now, let's say this noise and this interruption coming from the outside world, an intrusion into this world, we don't give it any more energy and focus. And when there's demands of others coming through, which also sometimes reinstigate that which we call darkness, because they're here to confuse us and place their own inceptions into us. And in many cases, perhaps we don't know that they themselves are being deceived. But we must not allow that to happen, because those of us who are on this path, we are your faithful spirit warriors. We are the rainbow children of that new dawn. And by honoring ourselves and our inner voice, we're honoring you, beloved mother. We're not honoring you just with this ideal we have about you, but we are allowing ourselves to become you. And with that, we eventually will not allow any more darkness, intrusion, interjection into our lives, because the moment we're going to choose ourselves and how to live fully within the presence of our human divine child, darkness will have nothing more to say, because all about our life will be simply this love. Illumined love, your love, beloved mother, true love of the beloved within and the beloved without, and their meeting in the sacred convergence you call the meeting of beloved hearts as one. I pray, you pray, we pray with all of our burning heart desire that your plan of Illumined Union manifests for the group of these souls that have had this vow made to not just enter onto this path and through this journey, but to finish it, to complete it. Let no obstruction be big enough for our fulfillment, our glorious victory that is already at hand. And perhaps, yes, there are delays. And because of that, sometimes we feel misfortunate and unfulfilled. But still we continue to trust, because we know you. Because we know that we are, as you, the ultimate beloved. And you are the ultimate life force that keeps on reinstating yourself. You are reinforcing what is the truth. You know the truth. And we know it because we are all your beautiful, majestic children. Children of the stars, children of earth. As one being, together, together, together. Let us cherish our human relationship bonds and not run away from each other through ignorance and deceit of the devil, and instead go into false worship of the false light, but let us move closer into that which is true, intimate, lasting partnership with the other through the partnership we have with ourselves. And by choosing that every day, little by little, we're getting closer to the fulfillment of your plan and the plan for ascension in the body. And we're thanking you for always being with us and looking out for us, because a lot of times we maybe don't see, but we are fully protected by you. Thank you, beloved Mother of Life and the Father of all creation, source of life and life force that guides us onwards and upwards. As always, with love, wisdom, and power, and great devotion to this plan. Thank you. And now we release. And you might say, thank you a few more times. Thank you. I really feel that gratitude. Thank you. Thank you, life. Thank you. Feel how you're loved, fulfilled, and guided. And you are, and you shall be. I'll see you in the next video update. For now, take good care of yourself, and as always, I love you.